When the question comes of what anime comedy you'll have me cackling maniacally and inevitably confusing all those around me, my quick response will always be Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-kun. It brightens my face with a smile a mile long, which is also the most light I've gotten in a while. Sure, it's got that obliviousness to love in a dense dude and a parodical self-consciousness of the genre it bears the trappings of. Nozaki-kun isn't notably unique, even taking into consideration its occasional amusing breaks of convention. Rather, it's the execution that makes it utterly brilliant. You might see a simple comedy, but with its basic groundwork it builds jokes that had me dying from lack of oxygen rather than endless ramen. Patreon.com/core-review.
Are you ever gonna start making actual points? Shut up, dude. I'm trying to be engaging and shareable. The only thing you're engaging is the dislike button.
Explaining humor always makes me feel like an idiot, but hey, I've thrown self-consciousness to the dogs, so let's jump right into it. The first reason for Gekkan's greatness is that of the pivotal character, Chiyo Sakura. And no, it's not just because she falls into a certain trend of characters I like. Sakura is so effective because she simultaneously outlines two seemingly contradictory character traits. One moment she's the eager and oblivious optimist, the other a cynical straight man. The whiplash effect of the often sudden switch is conducive to comedic impact, while giving her greater room to be utilized differently in gags depending on what is needed, and helping prevent a sense of predictability by way of her nuance. And especially important, it always keeps it fitting for her character. Chiyo doesn't just pull a random 180 to give you a chuckle at the cost of your investment. She's a bubbly individual with plenty of quirks to be sure, but when pitted against the even more eccentric cast with their intentionally obnoxious or absurd character traits, she starts to look pretty normal by comparison. Except that is when the focus turns to her amusingly overprotective love for Nozaki. As with most comedies, the show plays with expectations, generally with the idea of something more positive being dismissed in lieu of the revelation that the reality is stupider than one could have imagined, along with some occasional really fast moments of the unexpected in a more surreal direction to keep you on your toes. The ultimate idiocy being brought to light for a perturbed disappointment is especially common in Chiyo. It seems the show practically wants to shatter her hope in humanity. However, her girlish resolve stays strong against it, which is exemplified in her pairing with the titular Nozaki-kun, posing a battle of her disappointment and growing cynicism against her infatuation and rose-tinted glasses, as she realizes he's, well, kind of an oblivious idiot, yet she still can't help swooning over him and expecting higher things, which builds a consistent humorous rapport. All this is brought to the tens by how extremely animated she is, often the show contrasting her excitement with a highly expressive dynamic cut against her disappointment in but a single blank-faced expression, creating comedic contrast by way of the extremes on either end, which is matched in the voice actor's fantastic performance. Something about hearing the soul seep out of this delightful girl is sickly satisfying in a laughter-inducing way. Compelling also is her expressions of surprise, jealousy, and anger. There's always a nice variety. Chiyo's got surprisingly a lot of depth to her emotionally, even if little of her character itself is made explicit. Also, she's cute as fuck. Nozaki is equally matched with Chiyo in comedic potential, the few gags posed from his perspective particularly funny, perhaps precisely because of their infrequency. His sullen expression is contrasted against his obliviousness to social cues and very genuine character, most obviously reflected in the core premise, him being a shoujo manga author. Not only is he not a girl, or even particularly effeminate, he also has no experience with love at all. However, for Nozaki, it doesn't even occur to him to think it strange. Often the confusion behind what he's thinking, usually an assumption of something grander than the actuality, is a source of the humor. But in those moments where we get to follow his train of thought, it gives us an even funnier insight into his character, because all his actions are so wholehearted, even if often simple-minded. Following his line of logic is an adventure unto itself, but the appeal isn't merely that of laughing at. Nozaki isn't without his qualities. Not only does he possess an impressive array of talents, he's not simply a butt to the joke as most doofs tend to be. His genuinity is compelling, and often there are a variety of companions to his antics, and he's also not entirely lacking in perception, or beyond his own objects of surprise and annoyance, lending weight to a greater level of engagement in his character, which in turn makes the comedic impact more powerful thanks to a deeper investment.
Come on, man, this video's about comedy. Make some jokes. People like to laugh. I know, this is a video about comedy. And I did the whole cutaway in the middle of a line thing. You think that's enough to qualify as humor? It's not funny till half your audience is wondering when you're going to get back to the actual video. Oh. So guys, how about politics?
You can see a lot of similarities aside those I outlined in the pivotal characters throughout the entire cast. Generally, they have one primary interest that they are extremely dedicated to, and often lack a self-awareness or social perception, especially in regards to when their interest is at the forefront, which leads to a variety of humorous misunderstandings. What I find interesting is that even when these interests or misunderstandings of another's interests fall outside of societal norms, rather than take the easy route of just, look, laugh at the weird thing, it acknowledges the humor in the unusualness of it, but also fully embraces that non-standard path. One moment when Kashima finds a volume of Nozaki's manga Let's Fall in Love in her senpai Hori's bag, it ultimately leads down an absurd and untrue path of her believing Hori wants to be treated like a princess and to wear a dress. Her reaction isn't disgust, rather she fully embraces this in a supportive fashion, and the humor comes from the fact that this is far from the actuality of the situation. I'm not saying mean-spirited comedy is inherently bad or anything, but the fact it goes the extra mile really increases my appreciation. And it also is perfectly logical with the type of person Kashima is, herself already an version of expected femininity, who fully embraces her character of Prince with no thought of it being unusual or wrong. When a comedy gets me genuinely engaged in characters and their dynamics, it sells every laugh all the more so because I'm building emotional connections that run deeper than just the breath expelled in my chuckle. Recontextualization is another appeal of Gekkan's humor, by way of it parodying shoujo romance through Nozaki's manga Let's Fall in Love. Not only is it an amusing turn each time we find out the less glamorous context to the creation of the romanticized manga, as it basically takes the piss out of it, because of how conventional a lot of shoujo romance manga is, and how aptly Nozaki's manga reflects it, the show basically lays out a comedic framework that can be mentally applied to the entire genre, amplifying its effect. I find this type of humor especially effective because it kind of forces you to mentally rewind and rewrite all those previous moments in your head, giving you this great comedic kickback. This is all excellently realized with some expressive animation, a pleasing color palette, and a suitably goofy OST that altogether had me chilling and chuckling the whole way through. And being up to date with the manga, I have to say, I think the show actually makes some of the gags even better, thanks to these added elements alongside some really snappy and effective timing. So yeah, Gekkan's a funny show. That's why I like it.
Did you basically just review Gekkan Shoujo? I thought this was an analysis. Yeah, they're basically the same. It's just one has a title people will actually click on. And I have no idea how to do outros anyways without doing the stupid summary of the general quality meme that's boring and the same every time. I hate it, and yet I do it anyways. How about a pseudo-dialogue following your inner monologue? I don't know if I'm confident enough in my writing skills to make something that doesn't come off as really forced and unnecessary.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to my channel. Give me money on Patreon. Special thank you to Talon. Give me money on Patreon. Bye.